we're going to be making an Andy Warhol inspired painting and collage today. We're doing it inspired by his flower paintings that he did. He would repeat the same flower in all four corners of his canvas, but with different color schemes and a lot of texture in the background. The supplies we're going to need is a large black piece of paper. We're going to need some oil pastels. You're going to also want a brush with some water, different colored papers that you can use for your flowers, some paint, and then a pair of scissors and a glue stick, of course, as well. Okay, let's get started. All right, first step is we're going to try to create our textured background. So you could do this a couple different ways. If you don't have any paint on hand, you can use maybe some oil pastels, construction paper, crayons, things like that. And you can draw a bunch of marks all over your paper. We're trying to give it the feeling of grass. So I have a dark green one, and then I also have a light green one as well, just to give it some texture. So you can do this. You could do this all over if you'd like to. You can also use paint or a combination of the two. So right now I am using some oil pastel first, just to give a little bit of texture to the surface. Then I will be adding some paint on top because I want to try to create some different textures for my background. I don't want it to all be the same. I like to see a little bit of variety. So I'm just doing some quick little marks, and I'm doing them all sort of in the same direction. So you'll notice that they're all going in the same way, and I don't have some going one direction, some going the other direction. They're all kind of facing the same way. Now, when I'm done with this first layer of texture, now I'm going to get my water and my paint, and I'll be using a tempera paint for this part, and I'm going to wet my tempera paint cake, and then using this I can add a few more little marks all over. Now you're going to see that's going to create a really dark green. So now I have a light green, sort of a medium green, and now I have a sort of darker green that is all throughout it. And this just, again, giving me a little variety. I don't want everything to look identical and be the same. I want to see some different things happening in my background, so I am layering. Next, I'm actually going to add a little white to my background, and I'm doing this because I'm going to actually paint on top of it afterwards, and this is going to help my green look lighter. So I'm using my white as like a base. So I'm putting some white blobs here on my background. Now, wherever I put the white, I'm actually going to go on top of it with my green again. And when it dries, it's going to look a lot brighter because it's got that white underneath. Make it look brighter and more vibrant. So that's what I'm doing next. Really great variety of these textured grass. So I've got some sort of everywhere. I have light green, dark green, medium green, all different types of shades of green. So I'm really satisfied with the way my background looks as far as the texture goes. So when you're happy with the amount of grass sort of texture you've created, take it and set it aside, and we're going to be working on our flowers now. For this part, you're going to want a pencil and a variety of colors. Now, I happen to have a flower stencil that I'll be using to trace my flower designs, but it came from an original drawing that I did of a flower that kind of looked similar to his type of flowers, where it had 5 giant sort of curvy petals coming out of it. So if you don't have a stencil or a way of making one, you can just free draw it on a piece of paper, but you want 4 colors. So 4 colors are going to work. Doesn't matter what they are, what size they are, doesn't matter at all. All right, so I have my 4 colors, and you can repeat colors too. Sometimes Andy did that as well. So sometimes he might have like 2 yellows and then a red and a purple or something like that. Or they might be almost all the same. So I have got 4 different colors, and I've got my flower stencil. Again, you could free draw it with your hand and then trace it from there onto all of your designs, or you can do what I'm doing, which is taking my stencil, tracing around it, and you're going to cut them out. Now we are getting to the finish line here. We just have to add a little bit of a texture to the center of our flowers, and then we're going to be gluing them in place onto our background, which should be almost dry by now. Now some of these flowers have some pencil marks still showing because of where I drew. So what I'm going to do is flip them all over so I have nice clean sides. So I'm flipping them over, so if I see any pencil marks on it, I'm flipping it over, and that way the nice clean side is the side that's going to be facing me. Now I'm going to be putting the centers in, and for the centers we're just going to use a black oil pastel. You can also use some black paint or something like that, some of the same paint we used already if you'd like to, but I'm just going to make a few little like dots. I'm going to make like 4 smudges or so right in the middle of the flower. If you make only a few, if you make like 3 or something, it's fine. But Andy Warhol's center of his flowers are usually have a few little black smudges there in the middle because he used paint and kind of left a little bit of a texture. So I just created my little smudges in the middle, and now I'm ready to glue them in place. Let's get that background back. Okay, here's my background. It's a little bit wet in a couple spots, but it's not that big of a deal, so we're still going to work around it. I'm going to take this, I'm going to shove it off to the side just a little bit so I have some space here for my gluing. So here are 4 flowers. I have to decide where they're going to go in my picture. If I want to plan ahead before I start gluing, I can, or I can just do one at a time and start gluing them down. So I'm going to take my first one. Remember, this is the side that's going to be the front, so I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to take my glue stick, and I'm going to be putting some glue on it, and I'm going to be doing the outside edge, gluing the outside edge. That is the most important part to glue when you are gluing something down if you want it to be flat. You can put a little bit in the middle if you'd like, but the edges are the most important, and I'm using a placemat. Now I'm going to get back my big paper. I'm going to find a corner to put it in, and I'm going to lay it down and flatten it out. It doesn't need to be shoved super close in the corner, but it should be in sort of the corner area of our paper here. So I'm going to gently with one finger kind of flatten the edges by outlining it with my finger to make sure that I've gotten everything flat and even. And be careful about if you used oil pastel, because if you rub your finger on that, it will bleed and get all over the place. All right, let's do our second one and third and fourth until we're done. Okay, there we have it. We're finished with our Andy Warhol inspired painting slash collage. I think it came out awesome. Again, if you wanted to go bright with your background, you could get even some brighter colored paints or oil pastels, but I really like the textures I came up with and the color choices I did, and I just think it looks awesome. So hope you guys had fun doing this with me. I cannot wait to see the different colors you chose, see what sort of flower shapes you ended up with, and what kind of textures you did to create this Andy Warhol inspired painted collage. Have fun. See you next time.